sponsored from one person or the other. And at the end of the day, every regime it is called that one amendment does not sail through. But in this point in time, 4 members, all these 4 are private members' bill. The government has not sent any bill regarding reform in the prison. But because of the zeal of members, after visitation of prisons, after going through the act of establish a prison, a Nigerian prison, which was last amended in 1972, we discovered there are loopholes that need to be amended. So it was the zeal of the members that came up actually with the private member bills. And we as a committee, we want to make sure that we see to the passage of these bills before the end of this administration.
Now, the contents have been looked at. After this retreat, for instance, okay, let's first talk about this retreat. What will this retreat be looking at?
Well, the retreat is, we already done the public hearing. We had a technical committee that joint technical committee has already looked into the bills with their recommendations. We are going to look into their recommendations to see whether we can take all the recommendations or we add, because we had a public hearing, many Nigerians brought in their views. So we look at whether these views with those of the members are captured by this report. If they are not, we'll make sure everything is captured there. And those of the public hearing too, we put everything together to make sure we have a bill that can stand the test of time.
Okay. One major area that I do not know if it is contained in the bill is which has been highlighted at this opening ceremony, is whether the prisons is just a sit-down, look and take and absorb and release thing. If they have any initiative in the justice system of incarcerating people.
Well, the problem as it is today, the officers operating in Nigerian prisons are helpless because of the law. Any person that they bring, either by the police or by the court, they just absorb and keep. And the federal government keeps feeding them. And that's what they want to run away from now. We're setting a time limit for everything. If somebody is under trial, there must be a limit for trial. Because others are there 20 years, they're still on trial. 20 years are still on trial. There are other condemned criminals that have been there for more than 30 years. The state governments have not taken any action. We want to set time limit for everything. The federal government cannot keep spending unabated. The judiciary must key in to the law we're about making now, so that there will be time limit for trial. You cannot try forever. I was in Yola prison. I saw a woman that's been under trial for the past 30 years. And it was a simple offense. She kind of stole a sewing machine or something like that, or a radio, I forgot, a transistor. And for the past 30 years, the person's under trial. It's unfair. So these are the issues we want to reduce. To make it a correctional center. If you know very well that what we have, the practice we have right now is that people come out, if somebody steals a good and it goes to jail, they come out more hardened than before. So we want to make sure it's more of a correctional center than the word prison.
Okay. Yeah. And if this time limit is to be effective, would it mean that if this time limit is violated, the prison would be at liberty to release?
Yeah, definitely we want to say this time, the prison must have a way out of it. It cannot keeping a person like that. The federal government keeps, say economic predicament right now. You imagine federal government keeps feeding prisoners 3 times per meal at the height of the economy, when these prisoners can be set free. It's not fair. So we want to reduce to make sure we save costs and we save lives and we reform minds.
Some of the provisions 17 years ago would have been obsolete now. What are you doing about updating the content?
As a matter of fact, what we have is completely a new fresh work done. Because one, we were working on the basis of the various bills that were actually private member bills that were brought during this dispensation. So, for example, in the Senate, we have 4 different bills, and all the 4 were all 4 different private member bills. And the bills that were before the Senate were also completely different from the bills that were, in terms of the sponsors and all that, from the ones that were before the House of Representatives. So, our starting point was using those bills. That's one. Secondly, we also looked at the Mandela rules. As you will know, the Mandela rules have just, which is the United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for treatment of offenders, prisoners. This was, we're using the modified version, which of course was just passed a couple of years back. So we couldn't obviously be looking at the content of what had happened 16 years ago. So, and when we started work, immediately after the hearings, so we had a public hearing in November last year by the House of Rep, looking at those 4 bills. Following that, in February, we had also a public hearing by the Senate. So in all, we've had about 5 different retreats, both by the subcommittee and the technical committee, which now helped us to bring about the document we are reviewing today. So this is like a further step. We're looking at how then do we discuss this clause by clause with the members of the Committee of Interior of the House of Representatives. So in other words, you are having completely an updated version of the bill.
Do you intend to go through this kind of process for the Senate too?
Yes, we have been waiting for the Senate to give us a date for the retreat, but they said they want theirs in Abuja. So we're hoping, the dates have been actually shifted about twice now, so we're hoping that in no distant time we will have the Senate give us a date. And as you will may be aware, we also have in our presence the Director of Bills from both the Senate and the House of Rep here. So this is to enable us, ensure that we're moving towards a proper harmonization so that we don't have a different piece of document before the Senate and a different document before the House of Rep.
You mentioned, and some of the speakers at the opening ceremony mentioned some highlights. One highlight, which I find, which may be controversial, is whether the prison services would have an initiative as to whether those warrants can be either rejected or taken once they are brought. They just collect whatever is brought to them.
What you see in the content of the bill is that there are various safeguards. There are various safeguards that will enable the prisons to activate a process which will enable other stakeholders to do the needful. So that's quite there. But again, one of the very fundamental introductions in the bill is actually the issue relating to non-custodial measures and how we can fast-track the establishment of them in terms of having a non-custodial service, which should then be a part of the Nigerian Correctional Service. So we are proposing having Nigerian Correctional Service made up of Nigerian Prison Service and another ambit made up, which is Nigerian Non-Custodial Service, so that those who don't need to be in prison, those who are minor offenders, can maybe meant to serve their sentence doing certain work in the community and under supervision.
And monitored by the prison?
Monitored by the correctional officers, not by the non-custodial officers, who are, of course, specially trained. Some of them may be seconded from welfare officers of the prison and things like that. But that will help us. Then there are also other provisions, and as you will see in the next discussions that we will have, which include issues about proper processes in terms of preventing the abuse of the process for mentally ill prisoners. So there are provisions relating to issues about, physically disabled prisoners. There are recommendations relating to ensuring that we have booster facilities for young offenders in every state of the Federation, have separate facilities for women offenders in every state so that we don't have mixed facilities that exposes them to certain dangers, and ensuring that the young offenders facility becomes or serves as the rehabilitation and correctional centers. So in other words, when you look at the content of the bill, you see certain things that actually enables it to align towards the full implementation of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015.
We are expecting that in the months to come, and one of the promises is that before the 2019 general elections, this new act would have been passed. And so we are expecting that this retreat would have formed the foundation upon which a new law would emerge from the Nigeria Prisons Act. Thank you for being part of our program today. We shall be exposing other areas that need your evaluation in the days to come. We'll see you in another edition.
Sneakers is a synonym for athletic shoes, the generic name for footwear primarily designed for physical exercise. It is usually designed with flexible sole made of rubber and an upper part of leather or canvas. Sneakers go back a long way. In the late 18th century, people wore rubber-soled shoes called plimsolls, but they were pretty crude. For one thing, there was no right foot or left foot. Around 1892, the US Rubber Company came up with more comfortable rubber sneakers with canvas tops called Cades. By 1917, the sneakers began to be mass-produced. They got the nickname sneakers because they were so quiet. A person wearing them could sneak up on someone without being noticed. Sneakers, though designed for sports, have gradually crept into everyday fashion due to its easy fit and comfort. It comes in diverse colors, designs, and models. The high tops, covering the ankle only. The low tops, or Oxford, stay just below the ankle. The mid-cut sneakers are in between the high and the low tops. The sneaker boots extend to the calf. The slip-ons, much like the low tops, do not cover the ankle and do not have laces. The low top CVO, that is Circular Vamp Oxford,